guys ready for a great night? I'm so excited about the word that Pastor Ryan's going to bring. But before we get into all that, I got some announcements for you. Did you have a good week, first off? This is super great. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Trey's not here right now, but he got moved up to the varsity, which means we get to serve him at the football dinners. How cool is that? So if you are going on the trip tomorrow, let me hear a woo-woo. I am so stoked, super stoked. So what we're going to do is leave here at around 5 o'clock. So you can come to the football dinner, and then you can stay. You can just stay here and hang out, help clean up until we load the bus and head off into the wild blue yonder. We are going to have a meeting after the service tonight so that you have all the details. Make sure you understand what to pack. I would like to believe that you're all packed 3 days ago and you're ready to go. But truth is, we all know we're shoving things in a bag tomorrow. So we're going to make sure that we know where we're staying, what we're expecting, so you know what to get in there. We have some great things happening at church on Sunday. This coming Sunday, we need you to sign up for a couple of things. You won't be here this Sunday, but the next Sunday. We are having a spaghetti dinner fundraiser for you guys. So you need to be prepared to help with that. The date of that is the 15th, okay? And then we're also, as a part of that, doing a talent show. So we need you to have talents, all right? So if you haven't figured that out yet, go ahead and start practicing something. Cody is going to be walking on his hands. So just know that happens. So it can be any kind of great talent. And if it's, get creative. If you want to read a piece of poetry that you've written, you can do that. If you want to bring in artwork that you've painted to display, you can do that. If you want to paint live, if you want to play live music, whatever. Run it by me and Ryan, but basically be as creative as you want to. The goal is to show off everyone's unique gifts. So the more unique, the better. Your phone turned off with all of your fancy high tech. Isn't Leslie beautiful, though? Did I miss any announcements? I think that's it. Spaghetti dinner, talent show, stay afterwards. Oh, I know what it is. If you're going to Gatlinburg, Tennessee with us to listen to all of the musics and hear all of the great things and maybe see a bear, you need to pay me $25 to reserve your spot. And without further ado, let's get our worship on. Actually, let me open us in prayer. Can I do that? I just want to pray. God, you are so good. And I know on days where our spirits are drained and our hearts are just exhausted and our minds are at their weakest and the crowd is low because a lot of people were too tired to make it to the building. On those kind of nights, you speak the clearest, you speak the loudest, and we dive deeper than we ever possibly could because our hearts are just in need. So I have a feeling that tonight's one of those nights. And so for every tired heart in here, Lord, I just pray that you pour your word, your spirit, your love, your comfort, your energy, and your joy into us tonight, God. We are so excited to be in your house. And we are thankful for a country where that's possible. So as we gather openly, we don't take that for granted. And it is in your son's name, Jesus, that I pray. Amen.
Don't go anywhere. Before we get started with worship, I have one more special announcement, and I need Ryan Welshans up here as well. So for those of you who may not know, many of you may not know this, but October is Pastor Appreciation Month. And Sunday, they will be recognizing Pastor Tim. But as you know, our fearless leaders will be out of town with us at the Cocoa Trip. So tonight, we are going to recognize Mandy and Ryan for Pastor Appreciation Month. Just want to say thank you guys for all your hard work, all the time and the energy and effort you guys put in. You guys go above and beyond for this group, and we love you guys. And we thank you so much for all of your efforts. And let's give them one more round of applause.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right. One more round for Ryan and Mandy. All right, now let's go ahead and stand as we prepare to worship tonight. There is no fear, 'cause I believe. There is no doubt, 'cause I have seen your faithfulness, my fortress. times when I can feel you, I don't have to be afraid. And though my eyes have never seen you, well, I've seen enough to say I know that you are good. I know that you are kind. I know that you are so much more than what I leave behind. I know that I am loved. I know that I am saved. 'Cause even in the fire, to live is Christ, to die is gain. I know that you are good. On my darkest day, from my deepest pain, through it all, my heart will choose to sing your praise. On my darkest day, from my deepest pain, through it all, my heart will choose to sing your praise. On my darkest day, from my deepest pain, through it all, my heart will choose to sing your praise. I know that you are good. I know that you are kind. I know that you are so much more than what I leave behind. I know that I am loved. I know that I am saved. 'Cause even in the fire, to live is Christ, to die is gain. I know that you are good. Well, I know that you are
This morning, I would like to use as a subject from which to preach the drum major instinct. A desire to be out front, a desire to lead the parade, a desire to be first. Gamut of life. We all want to be important, to surpass others, to achieve distinction, to lead the parade. If any of you are around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King gave his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to be able to say that day that I did tried to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. Then my living will not be in vain.
So, tonight, as we look at wrapping up this series, we are focusing on what it means and also what it means for you to experience success, not for yourself, but through the success of others. Here's a reality for us. How many in the room would say that you feel like you are a leader? Everybody in the room is in some way, shape, or form a leader. Because leadership is about, next slide, influence. Each of you influence somebody in your life. You may influence your siblings, you may influence your friends, you may influence your parents even. You may influence people you have no clue to whom you're actually influencing, but everybody in this room, whether you believe it or not, is a leader. And so the question becomes, what am I to do with my influence? How do I use it? What happens when my influence starts to change from something to something else, or from this group of people to this group of people? How do I deal with my influence? I've been in ministry for like 10 plus years, like 11, 12 years. And I've seen a lot of different leaders in my life. And I've changed as a leader. And in my experience, there are 3 different types of leaders that you encounter. And again, you may think to yourself, I'm not a leader. I don't do anything that leads anything whatsoever. But actually what you do right now with your life, you fall into one of these 3 categories as well. And so we have to ask ourselves the question, like, where is God leading me in the areas of influence? And so it would be this. First is the unconfident leader. The unconfident leader makes everything about themselves and their abilities, and they believe that they can do certain things that they know they can do, that they have proven in certain ways, but they are only confident in what they can sustain. And so that means that whenever you present something new to them, a new challenge they've never experienced before, something where they have to grow or even lead other people or stretch themselves, they can't do it. Not because they literally can't, but because their confidence is just under. It's not really about anything other than what they can do right here, right now with their life. And then there is also the overconfident leader. This leader does well when they feel like it's all up to them and about them. They've had success. They feel like they've achieved certain things, and they've got just great success in certain areas. And so when you are presented with things where you need to actually like level up a little bit, change a little bit, grow a little bit, they can't do it. They can't grow because they feel like they've reached their peak. They are overconfident. A confident leader is somebody to whom knows their weaknesses, they know their abilities, they know the areas that they need to grow, they seek growth intentionally. And at the end of the day, they are willing to, especially in a Christian sense, learn to find confidence not just in their abilities, but God's abilities to use them and God's abilities to work in the lives of the people to whom they're leading or who is around them. These 3 areas of leadership, the underconfident, overconfident, and confident leader, which one are you if you had to guess? I'm not asking you to blurt that out. That would be really embarrassing. But just think about it for a minute. Because I want to talk to you tonight not as just students, but as leaders. And for those of you that are going on the Cocoa Beach trip, you're going to be in a leadership conference tomorrow. And this is going to hopefully prep you for some conversations and things that you're going to experience. Leadership, the ability to lead others, the ability to lead yourself even, is not a black hole. We think that leadership at times is like us being in charge, us having the decisions, and us being able to kind of be the one who's out in front, the drum major instinct. How many of y'all have the drum major at school? Anybody have a drum major at school, right? They're leading the charge, right? Were you the drum major? You remember the drum major? Remember the drum major in school? They were in charge, and we all have that instinct at some point to be out in front. And he doesn't get into it in his speech, but I'm inundated with 4 drum majors in my house. Who are they? My children. They lead our house. They believe that they lead our house, especially the youngest. He thinks that he's in charge. But at the end of the day, we have this leadership instinct in us to want to take charge and to move forward. But leadership is not just about being in charge and getting what you want and being out in front. Leadership is deeper than that. Leadership is actually more loving than that. Leadership is not a black hole that just kind of puts itself back where you're at the center and everything pulls into you. Leadership is actually about giving life to others. It's about helping others discover their gifts and their talents. Challenging people to push themselves out of their comfort zone, and celebrating when people have success, even if it is better success than you. You see, in your school and in your situation, and I've been there too, in many ways still am at certain times, we are tempted to think that if somebody else is doing well, that means we're not. And at times it actually means that we as Christians come up alongside and we actually do something very, very countercultural. We actually support others in their success. We want others to do well because in others doing well and us championing them and walking alongside them, it actually makes us better people and better leaders. And you might be thinking to yourself, look, Ryan, I'm not a leader. I can't help anybody because I can barely help myself. How many of y'all would say you've been in that place? Like, I can't help anybody. I can't do anything. I am just lost myself. We've all been there at times. But real leadership actually says, you know what, look, in order to help others, I may actually need to help them in the same way that I want to be helped. And so this is a video from Simon Sinek. He's an author and speaker, and he actually talks about what it looks like sometimes to help yourself by actually helping others with the same things you're struggling with. Somebody in a Q&A asked him a question probably regarding what do you do when you want to help others but you can't help yourself, and here was his response.
So, 2 answers. One is service is king, and it doesn't mean not-for-profit, but showing up to serve, to give to others. But it sounds like you've got that one. And the other question is, who are you helping? I mean that specifically, like who is going through, someone you care about, or maybe you don't. Somebody in your life who's going through what you're going through, commit to helping them. This is the problem. We're all looking for our own answers. It's kind of a very selfish disposition, right? It's like there's an entire section in the bookshop called self-help, and there's no section in the bookshop called help others, right? How can I lose 10 pounds? How can I find love? How can I find the job of my dreams, right? As opposed to how can I help my friend live a healthy life? How can I help somebody I care about find somebody who will take care of them, for them to love? How can I help somebody find a career that they'll be passionate about for their entire life? Right? Commit ourselves to solving and helping others who are suffering with the same challenges we're struggling with, and we will accidentally solve our own problems. So I did that with a friend of mine. I have a friend who's been really struggling in her job, and she's an entrepreneur, and it's been an emotional roller coaster, which then affects her marriage, the whole deal. She's having a really hard time, and she's always coming to me for advice, and I'm always sitting with her and trying to give her the best advice. And this has been going on for a while, and it's not working. So I came up with an idea. I told her that I need help, which is true. I need plenty of help. I told her I wasn't lying. I told her some of the challenges I had, and I said, can I make a deal with you? This is I wasn't in the middle of talking to her. It's like, hey, I have an idea. I need your help. Can I pay you to coach me? Will you be my my executive coach, because I love you, I've known you for years, you know everything about me, I trust you, I'll listen to you, and I need a coach. Will you be my coach? You know, and I don't want it to take away from your income, so I'll pay, you know. And she said, fine. And she's not an executive coach, by the way, she's a personal trainer. And so she started coaching me, and we'd get together every week, and we'd sit down, and we'd talk through everything, and she would commit herself, and she'd take notes and come up with strategies on how to help me. And a bunch of weeks in, her life started to turn around. And she started to find a confidence that she never had before in her own business. She started to make decisions that she would never have had the courage to make. And like many, many weeks into it, I said, by the way, you know what I did there? I took my own theory and tried it out. Turns out it works. So commit yourself to helping others who are struggling with what you're struggling with, and you may find your own solution that way.
I love that advice. In the Jesus School of Leadership, if we were to talk to Jesus about what does it mean to be successful in this life, he would say the success of others actually matters more, not just in yourself. And so Jesus being asked, like, what's the most important thing? Who's going to end up being the top dog in your kingdom and all this stuff? Jesus called his disciples together and he said, you know, that those who you regard as rulers of Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become a great among you must be a servant, and whoever wants to be first must be a slave to all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life for the ransom of many. In order to grow as a leader, not even just grow as a leader, but to just become a better human, we need to ask ourselves the question, how much of my life is dedicated to the success of others? How much of my life have I actually laid down for others? A servant is somebody who lifts up and who does something for others in their lives that they could not even maybe do for themselves. There are people in your life right now, maybe in your classroom or even in your home or even here in the youth group, who need you to be something that they can't even maybe articulate. A friend, somebody who needs a voice to listen to, or an ear to listen to, somebody who needs to see confidence in themselves that maybe you have, and maybe even if you don't have, but if you sit there and you actually talk to them about how cool they are, you actually feel a little bit better about yourself. One of the things that I'm constantly amazed at in what it means to just be a human is the fact that we, for some reason, feel like, again, if others are doing well, we're not. When in actuality, we learn more about ourselves and others when others succeed and we come alongside them. So we're going to take a look at a story tonight about Saul and David. King David was a very prominent king in the Old Testament, and the king before King David was King Saul. He was Israel's first king, and this is how much you have to know they really loved King Saul when he was immediately started off as king, all right? It says this about King Saul. It says, Kish had a son named Saul, a handsome young man as could be found anywhere in Israel. And he had a head taller than anyone else. And basically all that means is he was tall and handsome, much like myself. Why are you laughing? Tall and handsome, not like Pastor Ryan, but is what it is. With that said, he was tall and handsome. He was everything they wanted in a king. And he started off actually pretty good as a king. He was God-honoring and he won battles for them. But very quickly things turned south because in his heart, Saul was an overconfident leader. And what happens with an overconfident leader is when things go well, guess what they do? They become more confident. They become overly confident. So this is what ends up happening in his life. Saul became so overly confident that he started to let things slip in his relationship with God and his leadership of Israel. And where we come to this part in the story, there's this prophet named Samuel he's the one who anointed Saul as king. He's a prophet. He's a guy who kind of in between God and the people. He's somebody that's really special, and he talks to the king as somebody who's speaking for God to the king. And Samuel goes to meet Saul because God said this to Samuel: I regret that I have made Saul king because he has turned away from me and not carried out my instructions. And so what had happened in the story was Saul was told to go out and with the Israelites and take out this particular tribe of people. They were kind of in between them and being able to take over the land that God had given to them. They go in, and God said, listen, you got to wipe everything out. Everything, down to the animals and the stuff, everything. And so they go to the battle, they do the battle, but Saul decides, hey, I'm actually going to leave the king alive, and I'm also going to have some other things, some property and possessions, and some cattle and other things that we're just going to keep for ourselves. And to make it all good, we're actually going to sacrifice some of those cattle to God, and we'll be okay. Well, he disobeyed God in that moment. He didn't do what God told him to do. He thought he had a different way, and he could succeed in a different way. And so Samuel comes to him early in the morning. Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told Saul has gone to Carmel, or Caramel, whichever you want, but Carmel. There he set up a monument to his own honor, and he has turned and gone down to Gilgal. So Saul literally goes to talk to, Samuel goes to talk to Saul, and he's putting up a monument for himself. And so when he goes down and he talks to him, he basically tells him, look, you disobeyed God. You didn't do what God told you to do. And you know what? You're arrogant and you're prideful. You got to get over yourself. And so he says this because Saul basically had himself, and he basically told Samuel, listen, I did what the Lord told me to do. I kept some stuff for myself, but I sacrificed some animals for God. So we're good, right? We're good. We've sacrificed. We've worshiped God, even if we didn't do what we told him to do. And Samuel replied to him and says, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. Then Saul said to Samuel, I am a sinner, violated the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of men, and so I gave in to them. He's had success, and he lets it go to his head. He starts using things like worship for his own personal gain because of making sure he's seen rightly in the eyes of people. And he starts using God's ordained influence in his life as power and king to build himself up. There's a difference between being used by God, which we're all called to do, and using God for your own benefit. And God will not be used. He will not be used by us. He will use us if we humble ourselves, but he will not be used by us. And in this moment, King David shows up. King David shows up in the story in a really powerful way. There's this moment where Samuel, then knowing that Saul is no longer going to be king, is called by God to go find the new king, even no matter how young he is or whatever. And so he goes to the house of Jesse, this guy. And he goes to this guy, Jesse. Jesse has 7 sons. And he goes down the list of sons in this meeting room, and basically he goes to, yet again, the tallest, most handsome son and says, this is going to be king, right? God says, no, I look at the heart. I look at the heart, man looks at the outward appearance. And so he goes to the next brother. Not him. The next brother, not him. The next brother, not him. All the way down the line. But he's all done. He's like, do you have any other kids? And Jesse actually says to Samuel, listen, my youngest son is out in the field. And in the Hebrew language, that word for youngest son actually means insignificant. Imagine your parent calling you like insignificant. What would that do to your heart? How would you see yourself? So David is a shepherd, and shepherds weren't like, we think of them as like really great people, but back in the day, shepherds were actually people that were kind of outcasts. And his dad's calling him insignificant. And David shows up in the house after being called out, and he comes into the house. The Lord says, that's him. This insignificant, unimportant kid named David is going to be king. Now, you all have heard the story of David and Goliath, right? No? Never heard of the story of David and Goliath? David and Goliath's story is probably one of those church stories that we hear all the time or that we hear about, and we just kind of like glance over what's really going on in the story because it tells us everything about what it is to be successful in leadership and to succeed in the lives of others. And so we're going to read it together. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." There was this valley of Elah, they called it, and there was Goliath there taunting the Israelites with the other Philistines. They're taunting the Israelites, and they're basically telling them, you guys are nothing. God's people are nothing. I got it all together. And David shows up, and Saul, just like the rest of them, David shows up and Saul is sitting there. He's completely just ripped away from all of his strength and his courage. He's the overconfident leader, but he can't rise to the occasion to lead his people into battle over the Philistines. So they got this giant Goliath who's just calling things out to him and harassing them. And so David comes up and he basically says, listen, I can fight him. And Saul said to him, look, you are not able to go out against the Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man. And he has been a warrior from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it and struck it and rescued sheep from its mouth. When it then turned on me, I seized it by its hair and struck it and killed it. That's a little bit violent. But David's a pretty capable dude. How many of y'all been hunting? Anybody in the room go hunting? I've never been hunting, ever. It's not for me? It's not for me. That's too bad. But the idea of ripping body parts of animals off and stuff. I mean, I hunt for food in the house. That's about it. Looking for the Doritos. But he's basically a pretty capable dude. And so he says, listen, your servant has killed both lion and bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defiled the armies of the living God. You see, David understands something, that it's not just confidence in himself that he needs, so he has the abilities, but it's confidence in what God can use him to do that matters more. The Lord has rescued me from this paw of the lion and the paw of the bear and he will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Saul said to David, go, and the Lord will be with you. Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head, and David fastened his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to wearing them. So Saul is giving him all his armor, and David says, what? I can't go in these. I'm not wearing your stuff. Takes it all off, goes down to a river, picks up 5 smooth stones. And when he picks up these stones, something really special happens. He goes out to battle. We'll just read through the story here. But he goes to the battle. He goes down to the Philistine Goliath. Goliath is taunting him back and forth. And David just ain't having it. Basically says, you're defying the living God. I'm taking you out. Pulls out one of those stones. And a what? What was that? A slingshot. Very good. Takes it, slings it. Knocks Goliath one time. Goliath goes down. David does what? Walks over. Chops the head off of Goliath. You didn't read that part in children's church, did you? It's pretty hardcore. But this is the whole story. And we know the story of David and Goliath if you grew up in church. If that's your first time hearing it, it's a lot more violent than they usually tell you growing up in church. It's pretty interesting story. But at the end of the day, the story about leadership is not even with the battle that he has with Goliath. The deal with leadership that he has to deal with as far as David and Saul happens before and after the battle. Before the battle, Saul is this arrogant, prideful, overconfident dude. David is literally called insignificant by his family. And this situation then puts them into a battle where the outcome produces the leadership of where the trajectory of who they are as people is going to come from. You've all been through battles. You've been in the midst of battles in your lives, and how you dealt with them before, yes, during, but then after is what typically boils down to kind of who you're shaping yourself out to be. And what ends up happening after the battle is the people start to fall in love with David because of what he's done. And they start chanting, Saul has slain his thousands, but David has slain his 10,000s. And that's actually the key to the whole passage. Because it's at this moment that Saul, from that time on, kept a close eye on David. Saul was losing his influence with his people. David's gaining popularity. And Saul had a choice. The kingship's already been taken away from him. But Saul had a choice at that point. One, I can actually serve David and show him the ropes of being king, put him in leadership, show him what to do, kind of mentor him, be there for him. Or I can do what? Kill him, take him out, because he's a threat. This is the issue of how we deal with our influence. And you may not want to kill people, I hope, praise be to God. But at the end of the day, you either want others to succeed, even when they're succeeding more than you, and you want to help them out, or you want to take him out because you actually have insecurities in yourself. And so Saul literally spends the rest of the whole book chasing after David. He chases him into caves and all sorts of places, tries to kill him several times, throws spears at him, all sorts of stuff. And David never wavers. David stays firm, not just in that he's doing where he's at is where God wants him to be, but he never wavers in his honor of Saul as king. David never tried to take his throne. He never tried to overthrow him. He always wanted Saul just to be the best king he could be. And that story ends with basically Saul going mad, going crazy. They get into a battle, and Saul literally ends his life by having somebody else kill him so the Philistines don't come and kill him, or the opposing army comes and kills him, because he doesn't want to be humiliated by the opposing army. And David shows up, and he's actually mourning over Saul's death. This guy who's actually tried to kill you, take you out, is jealous of you. Why would you want him? Why would you honor him? He's tried to kill you. It's because David understands that he just wanted Saul to be the best king that he could. And that it was David's job to actually help Saul be the best king. But it was Saul's pride that caved everything in. I don't know what you're going through right now. I don't know a lot of the issues you have in your life. But I do know this. You have a choice in this life to either create a black hole in your heart and in your life to where it's all about you, or to live for others. Jesus made it abundantly clear, not just to serve people, but then he modeled that by going to the cross. He was the king that Saul could never be. And even David and all his woes and issues that he had. Jesus was able to do something in your life when you actually start to allow him to be king over your life, in a way to serve you through his death on the cross, to provide you with new life. Jesus, who is the Son of God. Jesus, who is the creator of all things and all things hold together through him, actually taught himself to be lower. He came in a human form. He died a death on a cross to serve you. How much then are we called to serve others? How much then are we called to look for the success of others? And that is indeed the growth mindset. I want others to succeed and not just myself. But it's living the Jesus life that'll do it. And so here's what I want to do. There is no song for you tonight. There's no closing song. I want you to find a spot away from other people in the room. And I just want you to sit and think about how much Jesus has done for you. And then what are you going to do with that love and that knowledge and that service that he has done for you to show others that same kind of love? It might be with your family. It might be with a friend you have. Think of people to whom you need to serve and who need you to step in the gap of their insecurities, their hopelessness, maybe they're just feeling they don't even deserve to live, but where you can step in and speak true, abundant life and be something for them that they cannot even be for themselves in the name of Jesus. So spread out. Don't sit next to each other. Find a place in the sanctuary. It's going to be dead silent in here. And a song will play in a few seconds, or in a few minutes. But I just want you to be alone with yourself and your thoughts and the Lord. So find somewhere in the room. Go.